Hi, this is Sky Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Star Trek Adventures Warp Onyx campaign, the tales of Security Lieutenant Archibald. And at this point, Vatha has been killed, and her plan to take Archibald through the ion storm to the female entity that was talking to her has been completely foiled. Mayweather has died, as when he attempted to escape using the ion storm, Archibald actually hit him with he gave the order, right? And one of his security officers, one of his security crewmen, actually shot a photon torpedo at him as he was about to knock him away from the ion storm. But instead it sent his ship spinning into the ion storm, and Mayweather died, right? So Mayweather died, and at this point, this was the end of the campaign, with Archibald completely safe, about to leave with Rathmore to take his captaincy of the USS Wraith, which was a prototype Starfleet warship on Earth. So that was what was about to happen. Okay. Now, this gets interesting. What we're about to talk about is, normally, I just give you the deets on, hey, here's what happened in the campaign. We're going to change that a little bit because the ending of this campaign was part of a new structure I use to end campaigns, right? And it doesn't really match anything that you would normally use in Dungeons & Dragons, right? Okay, so which is the template for every other tabletop role-playing game in the world, in my opinion. And by the way, let's be clear, right? To me, you run Dungeons & Dragons, and then you run Dungeons & Dragons competition to get better at Dungeons & Dragons. That's all that's happening there. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear. I thought, so I actually love Star Trek Modiphius 2d20 system. But but my heart's always with Dungeons & Dragons. But I think it's really interesting to run, and there's no question, because of page 4, the rules aren't in charge, you're in charge. That means anything, every indie and OSR game is simply a source for me to bring new rule mechanics into Dungeons & Dragons, right? And there are some definite rule mechanics that need to come from the Modiphius 2d20 system into Dungeons & Dragons, because it's brilliant. It has a lot of amazing ideas, right? Okay, so I want to talk about infrastructure, or story infrastructure here. Okay, so basically, at this point, the campaign is over, okay? But the big mystery, but Vatha's plan failed, right? So now, her the Starfleet diplomacy officer who was talking to this female entity through her Betazoid meditation, there's this huge mystery, right, that is left untold, right? Now, I had a player called the Narrative Player, and he ran some campaigns for us. And he did something I had never seen before that I use now to this day. And basically what he did was he would tell us what would happen off screen. I had never seen this done, right? In Dungeons & Dragons, you just tell the player characters, what's happening. And then you might have a bard say, oh, like 2 weeks ago, the king was killed, right? Even though they didn't see it and it happened 1,000 miles away, right? But this guy would just take the camera and say, listen, none of you guys, I'm about to tell you what's happening, 200 miles away with the villains, right? And you don't have any ability to change this. You're just witnessing it as players. Your player characters have absolutely no knowledge of this. I couldn't believe it. Like, I almost, when I saw him do it the first time, I was like, you can't do that. Like, this isn't talked about in any Dungeons & Dragons book. He did it in Dungeons & Dragons, right? And I'm like, this isn't a thing, right? This isn't a thing, right? But he used it masterfully, and I still use it to this day, right? And so I'm going to continue to tell you, I'm going to tell you what the mystery was. And I told the player too, right? So when the campaign ended, I'm like, this is the end of campaign, but I'm going to tell you the secret that Archibald never knew, so that you as the player know it, right? Because I wrote it, I worked really hard on it, and you earned knowing the secret, right? And the other thing is, like, other people are like, oh, well, you can't do that, because if you pick up campaign 2, then they know the truth, right? And basically, and I couldn't believe what I heard. Another dungeon master once told me, actually they were running Delta Force Green, right? They were running Delta Green in Call of Cthulhu, and they got to the end and they died, and they never knew the mystery, and the dungeon master of that Call of Cthulhu game never told them what happened or why all these things were happening to them. And I'm like, that sucks for the player characters, and that sucks for the players. Why would you possibly do this, right? So I get to a point where there's a major junction, right? And then I let it play through to the actual end. But if the players don't solve the mystery, if the player characters don't solve the mystery, I will tell the mystery solution to the players. And I think this is a much better way to run Dungeons & Dragons. And it's good, and it's joyful, and it makes for a fantastic campaign ending. And so I apologize that we didn't really even talk about anything more that happened in the campaign, but I want to explain to you what the next couple of videos are going to be, me explaining how I presented the end of the campaign to the player. And it was told as a story, right? And I was like, okay, here's the mystery that you didn't find out. Archibald never finds this out, but you do, gold player, right? And then in addition to this, it was also it was this issue of, so there was that. And then in addition to that, it was this issue of, and then also I kind of wrap the story. I give the Paragon story, the ending story, to the player character, right? Which I find really interesting. Also, just to be clear, this campaign ran 13 sessions. And this is the second completed campaign with the gold player, and it has been going spectacularly. It is, just the first campaign was a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Second campaign was a Dungeons & Dragons competitor campaign, but it's really been going fantastic. So thank you for letting me share this with you. Thank you for your patience. Of course, I'll continue the story soon. Thank you once again. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion on the Star Trek Adventures Modiphius 2d20 system and the Warp Onyx campaign. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.